Hello, everyone. My name is Sarafi, and I'm happy to meet you all. Today, I'm joined by a major YouTube influencer and Skyguard Arena community manager, Mekklord.
Hey, it's me. Am I a major YouTube influencer now?
Yes, sir. And a personal inspiration to me, so I'm glad to have you with me.
Oh,
Everyone who is one of my subscribers, I'm going to be putting Mekklord's channel in the description of this video. If you don't already subscribe to Mekklord, you definitely should. He is fantastic. He uploads pretty much daily content. He's really interesting, and I think you'll all enjoy his content. So
really appreciate uh, being a role model to you. Although I would say that you probably need better role models, but that's not for me to judge.
all right, Mekklord. So today we're going to talk about Rush Duels. Uh, a lot of discussion has been happening on the Duel Links subreddit regarding whether Rush Duels are going to negatively impact the Speed Duel player experience. What are your thoughts on how you expect Konami could implement the Rush Duels to this app? And do you think that Konami is making a mistake in not releasing Rush Duels as a separate app?
I think that Konami learned a lot from Cross Duels, releasing a completely different game with Yu-Gi-Oh branding, and I'm concerned that if they release a new way to play Yu-Gi-Oh that is a bit too far from the way people usually know about Yu-Gi-Oh, that they're probably going to be another miss, you know? Rush Duels, as they look like be integrated into Duel Links, is not like on as much of a new game as Cross Duels were, you know. But I still think that this is something that could potentially change, like be a completely secondary game to Duel Links, change the way that people fundamentally play Duel Links. And my hypothesis is that Rush Duels is going to like release in a new world, obviously, but that this world will not be connected to like the previous one, and that your um, progress in terms of resources and stuff will be reset to zero in a way that you're not gonna start Rush Duels with the gems that you've accrued in classic Duel Links, but you're gonna start with like a kind of like starting with a fresh account, but for a completely different game. So that's no more information than anyone else on the matter, but I think that's how Konami would handle it. So it's kind of a risk-free way to like change things without completely neutering it and introduce Rush Duels without completely um, placing all your chips in a game that you're going to close in a couple of months.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good insight. I do think that this is going to be an overall positive experience for Duel Links players, but it really depends on whether Konami, how they're going to implement the content and how they're going to, sort of make sure that people are able to get into Rush Duels without, wasting too many additional resources. I saw one person. Yeah, I don't know if you saw originally, but when Alito was first spoiled, I coped that we might get Ring Announcer as one of his cards. But I saw a guy who coped even harder than me. Someone saying that Rush Duel packs might be purchasable with gold, which which I just laughed out loud at. But there has been a lot of people talking about how Konami might introduce a new resource to make sure that we don't compete with gems. I'm not necessarily convinced that that would be a solution because if an event is giving you either gems or this new resource, then it's not like you're getting any more uh, money to spend on these two separate game modes. But I guess people are expecting that we would get both from the same event. Um, what are your thoughts on that? That doesn't sound very reasonable to me.
The way I think about it, I think like um, Duel Links and Rush Duels could have completely different event schedules. Because like in Duel Links, we get one new event per month, and the rest of the events are like basically automated at this point. Like there are very few changes between um, a roaming duelist event and well, they don't do roaming events anymore. but like the Duelist Kingdom iteration number 7 and iteration number 8, the very few things that change, I think they already have built this really good, honestly, art exoskeleton, I want to say, for the event structure so that they can easily plug events in and out and be relatively low maintenance, except on new events. And Duel Links events have been not set in stone, but like repeating enough. And I think the team working on Duel Links, I don't know how many people, but I think that they've been doing a good enough job just reusing the same events over and over that they can do it pretty much automatically and focus most of their efforts creating new events for the Rush Duel. So I think like in the early months of Rush Dueling, um, we're gonna see even more repeat events in duelings than we usually do. Case in point, there's no new character unlock this month, which I think is the case with every new word release, but I think the team has spent most of their recent efforts working on the Rush Duel content. I think that's also why we've gotten I think two case cups that were relatively close to one another this year, unless I'm mistaken.
It's true,
But
and I can see what you're talking about as well. People were expecting that we were going to get a structure deck with either Selena or Alito, and that didn't happen. The pickup box was an interesting creation, but it definitely
mm,
feels like there were no new cards. So it definitely feels like their interest is elsewhere at the moment.
yeah, basically. And boy, remember a bit splash? Anyway,
I wish.
and I don't think Duel Links is negatively impacted by the creation and release of events, mostly because the way events are being handled at the moment, I think, is already like good and automated enough that the team doesn't have to basically isn't stuck between a rock and a hard to make Duel Links events and Rush events. I think they've adopted a production strategy that allows them to be flexible and focused temporarily until the Rush Duel infrastructure to coexist with the Duel Links, so that we get both contents for both games.
Okay. All right. And as long as they do that, I think that people will have a relatively positive reaction to Rush Duels. And the reason for that is because Rush Duels is a much simpler, more straightforward format. So let's talk about the game itself. Mekklord,
Yes.
have you played Rush Duels at all?
I have. I am one of the 30 people who bought the Switch game on release, so that's my most Spain playing visuals. And I've tried to follow up with like the evolution of the meta game over the years. So my knowledge of it is like still incomplete, but I think I have a pretty good idea of like what used to be ish and how that may or may not translate to dual.
Yeah, so right now, Harpy Ladies, Cyber Dragons, and Seven's Wonder Fusion are the real big contenders. But um, those cards obviously are not going to be coming right away. So a lot of the changes for Rush Duels, we've seen a bigger focus on tribute summoning and in replacing the complicated. If you fulfill this condition, you could special summon this card to use it for material. We just have the ability to infinitely normal summon, which
Yeah.
it accomplishes the same thing, but it's less punishing for new players because they don't make as many mistakes for playing a card out of order. Um,
Yeah, basically. One thing that's important also is the way that you want to manage graveyard, because a lot of like the best cards in the game in general uh need you to have at least X of specific attribute or type in your graveyard in order to be activatable at all. I think like one of the first good decks of the Rush Duel was Dragoncaster, right? Where you played really interesting toolbox options and high attack beaters, dragons, alongside toolbox options and really good back row spellcasters, like spellcasters have an archetypal sort of mirrors that requires you to have four casters and great. So if you turbo out with like cards, caster that cycles a spellcaster or a draw, um, and then tribute to spells for like Dragias, you can get to that four requirement really quickly, and it's it used to be one of the decks that also had access to back row. So uh, that's also something that's important in Rush Duels. The fact that if you violate your hand every turn, you draw 5 cards every turn. So that also pretty good.
I'm going to quickly translate that because that audio was a little bad. What Mekklord is saying is that there are multiple cards in the game that require a certain number of types or attributes in your graveyard, such as Dark Liberation, which is a trap card that spellcasters can use, which allows them to shuffle 4 spellcasters from their graveyard back into their deck to destroy all attack position monsters an opponent controls. So in the early Rush Duel meta, people were mixing Yuga Odo and Lucidian Callister's decks together to make a sort of dragon spellcaster hybrid to make the best use of the high level dragons, attributing low level spellcasters to flood the board with good cards and set up the graveyard with good cards so that you could use the both the best of the best dragons and the best spellcaster support together. It was a really interesting deck, and I do think it's going to have a big place in the Yu-Gi-Oh meta.
One thing that's also very interesting to me is that they're apparently releasing the Yuga Maximum cards really early on, which
So
I
let me
don't recall
let me counter
these
that.
cards being
So it
really good.
we the way that the leak is shown is confusing, but it looks like all we're getting is a render of those cards. Those cards themselves have not been added. So I think that what's happening is they're pre-planning an explanation of how maximum summoning works and using those cards for
Okay.
that.
Oh, cool. So we're getting the maximum NFT. Got it.
Yeah, so I do think that what my guess is we will get Supreme Machine Magnum Overlord as the April release. You know how we got Odd Eyes Raging Dragon for April this year.
Yeah.
Every year we get the protagonist's like secondary ace as an extra card. So I'm thinking that that's what's going to happen. We're probably going to get Nail as our January unlock, and Nail will introduce maximum summoning to the game with uh, Yggdrago, the Sky Emperor. And once we have that, then we can introduce Yuga's maximum monster. And that it does mean that we're going to have this period, if I'm right, that does mean we're going to have this period between January and April where Rush Duels will probably be somewhat dominated by Yggdrago, the Sky Emperor decks, because
Mhm.
maximum monsters are bad. But we assume that we're going to get
Yeah.
Rush Duel skills that will make them playable. And the problem is, if maximum monsters are playable, they're kind of busted.
I mean, on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, if it's like a limited release, you're only ever getting one of each piece, the way we only have one of each Egyptian god, the way we only have one of each sacred beast. So it's not actually that good because I don't know, you unless you're playing Cyburst, whose whole strategy is draw deep until you draw your maximum monsters.
Yeah.
I don't think that's still very playable. Depends on how pushed the skills end up being there.
Speaking of which, we should definitely where are my Cipher the Sky Dragon skills, Konami? I mean, if you're only going to give me one card, then give me an Egyptian god
Didn't they
skill.
made one? They did make one.
Oh, the you mean the Poker Knights one? Well, I mean, they made the Sacred Beast skill actually is pretty decent. They didn't make one for
Yeah,
all 3 of the Egyptian gods.
but the caveat is you have to play sacred beasts.
Fair. At least Sacred
They made a
Beasts have their
Nobelist
own.
skill.
At least Sacred Beasts have their own like level 1 monsters.
True.
Um. Okay. Um.
And they have the best, the 13 best sprite starter.
Mhm. Okay. So uh, Rush Duels, we talked about how they have unlimited normal summons, which is really fun. They also have the fact that you can draw 5 cards each turn. And well, as long you draw up to 5 cards in your hand. So if you have 0 cards, you will draw 5, and then if you have at least 5 cards in your hand, you draw 1 card during your draw phase, and there's no maximum hand size. So with that in mind, it's unlikely that we're going to see Rush Duel deck sizes cut to 20. We also have a skill that was leaked that requires 15 monsters in the deck, so that's a little
Mm.
unreasonable for a 20-card deck. So with the idea that we might have a 40 to 60 card deck size introduced into Duel Links, that will make the deck not only compete with speed duels but be twice as expensive, since each deck will probably need its own set of 40 cards. Do you think that's possible with the existing main box sizes of 180 cards, or do you think that we're going to get more cards in each box moving forward?
I think it's possible because like most of early Rush Duels, and I think even to this day, a lot of deck building is like basically playing vanillas, you know? Like a lot of cards in your deck are gonna be 1500 vanillas that I don't think are gonna be ultra rares. You know, I think
Which I love, by
depending
the way.
I think they already leaked that Yuga gets one of the two 1500 attack spellcasters. I think it's the dark one. Maybe it's the light one, I forgot.
Yeah, no, that was the
Um
leak that Dark Sorcerer might be one of Yuga's drops at the gate, which would be fantastic.
yeah. What else is there to it? Like I think considering the how the legend rule works also, that we might be getting a couple of like 3B legend cards. I could be wrong on that. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic and hoping that Konami is like more generous than it actually is, but
So there has been a leaked Dark Magician Rush Duel skill, which references both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. Um, Dark Magician is a legend, but I feel like both the card trader and the limit one bundles have demonstrated how Konami can easily introduce legend cards for relatively free. So if they add if they add Dark Magician to the card trader, for example,
mm,
then you could just buy it as a card trader. Not only will that make it easy for you to get without feeling bad, but it's also a free prismatic. And that's the best part. I feel like all the legend cards should be cards that we can easily get prismatic because we only get one copy.
yeah, stuff like Mirage Dragon is a legend card. Polymerization is a huge one also.
Oh
Mirror
man,
Force, Magic Cylinder.
polymerization. Did you know that in the actual Rush Duel anime, they changed the name in Japanese from Yugo Shokan to Fusion Shokan because they changed the card to Fusion instead of to
Yeah,
polymerization. So they
yes, it is.
so they say Fusion Summon with Fusion in English, which is I thought was really interesting.
That's so cool. That is really cool.
Um, okay, so fusion monsters are in Rush Duels, but they aren't introduced in sevens until late season two. So we shouldn't expect fusion monsters for quite a while. Even if they release Rush Duel characters at a pretty fast pace, and really sevens has a lot of characters. I don't think we've had an anime that had as many characters that were so involved in the anime and had so many duels since GX. And look at how like GX is still going. I think this is the first year that we didn't get a GX character.
Yeah, there's so many characters that you could still release for GX that it's so uh, absolutely mind blowing to me.
Yep. GX was long though. GX I can't believe GX was as long as it was. They didn't make another anime that was that long after GX.
Um, no, that is true. That is true. They did shove a lot of characters into Arc 5, but it's not like we're getting Arc 5 Kite or Asta, you know?
Yeah, they're reprints of other characters. Which,
Reprints.
I mean, it
I
was
like that.
interesting. It was definitely cool to have their decks updated, even though we didn't get they switched Alexis's entire focus from ritual summoning to fusion summoning, which just makes it more
Because of
awkward. And
course.
where's my Cyberblader support?
Apparently Zane, like, his name cameoed as a legendary duelist in Arc 5, but guess they didn't wanna bother finding a reason to include Zane without CDI.
Yeah. Um. Okay. So we talked about the possibility of a 40 card deck size. Now, I do want to alleviate people's concerns because, like Mekklord said, a lot of the focus on Rush Duels is using vanilla monsters as tribute material. So you will be adding vanilla monsters to your deck because their type is more important than their effects. And remember that every character, when they are unlocked, must come with a playable deck. We take that for granted these days, but when we unlock Yuga Oto, he is going to have a playable Rush Duel deck from the start in his inventory. Those cards will be added to your collection. So if we get Yuga, Roman, Luke, and Gavin as the first four unlocks, which is likely, then that is 160 cards that are going to be added to your collection from the start. And then you have level ups and drops.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of cards that you're gonna probably cut, but they're still perfectly serviceable as tribute fodder and ways to fill out your graveyard early on, like stuff like Spell Archer, 1000 attack, level 3, vanilla that does nothing, is still decent in the context of I need something to get out of my hand so I can tribute for Seventh Roads Magician.
And it's wind. That's the big thing is that
And it is wind.
not only is it a spellcaster, but it's a different attribute than some of the other spellcasters. Um, one of the cards that's been leaked is Answer the Dark Swordsman or Dark Magical Swordsman.
Oh yeah.
it's hard for us to talk about the English names for cards that haven't been printed in English. But um, it
Don't they have an English name because of the Switch game?
I don't think it's official.
Oh,
Like they could still
thanks,
change it
Konami.
because I do think with cross duels coming out, I'm pretty sure they're going to use multi strike Dragon Dragius um as Luke's ace monster's name, but it was called Rush Dragon Dragiers for the longest time, even with like people translating it. So
Yeah,
uh,
that
we'll
is true.
we'll see. Uh, but um, Ancillary the Dark Magical Swordsman, I think is the name. It's level 6, and it has 2,000 attack points, and it's a spellcaster monster. So, um, that is probably kind of like the top end. We have like Answer, and we have Fire Dragon, which is a level 6 fire dragon monster. And those stats, like they have no effects. Those stats seem pretty low to us with cards like Cyber Alligator and Sub and Skull in the game. But that's kind of what you can expect from Rush Duels. Not only is it much more combat focused, but it's also much more trading focused because your stats are so low and your opponent can just if your opponent is behind, they can just set 3 and pass. Your stats are low, your access to destruction is low, your access to pierce is circumstantial. There's going to be a lot more situations where you trade back and forth, and the bare minimum, like a 1500 versus a 1400, is going to make such a difference because you're able to get through a monster and then potentially attack directly for maybe like 1200. And then your opponent will just go again, and then they'll draw a new hand and play their own board, and it's going to be those moments where you can poke your opponent for a little bit of extra damage that's going to define who wins the game, especially if we have 8,000 life points, which that part is kind of up in the air, but I don't expect us to get 4,000 because that would make the Psychic Archetype able to access its boss monsters too easily, I think.
Yeah, be a bit too busted. That plus there are still a lot of like combat tricks and stuff you can do to turn your weaker monsters into bigger monsters. Like Seventh Roads Magician's whole deal is that it grows stronger for each archetype you have in your graveyard, but only during your turn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have a spellcaster trap that boosts the attack of an attacked spellcaster by 500. There's another spell that boosts the attack by 700, I think. You have cards like Shocklead Dragon, which I think starts at 1600 or 1500, I forgot. But it can reduce the attack of an opponent's monster by that much, or by the attack of the strongest monster on your field. So, despite having like a relatively low attack value, it's still able to get over threats. It's not at 1600, I just googled it. Um, and yeah, attack values are not really high compared to classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Like the level 4 monsters peak at like 1500, except for like the few legends. But if you're playing like Vorse Raider, that's you're not playing Jinzo or another better legend that you could be playing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a call for you to make. I think that makes it very interesting though.
It does. And we will be looking forward to those classic legendary cards that we can only run one of each of a monster, spell, and trap. Although Graceful Charities kind of decide. I don't think there's a single spell that's better than Graceful Charity. sadly.
You can play Pot of Greed. Pot of Greed's actually bad in this deck in
It
this
is.
game. It's really pee pee poo poo.
That's so sad that you can finally play. They're like, oh, here, play Pot of Greed, go nuts. People are like, what? And then they said,
The
but if
one
you play Pot
format
of
in which it's
Greed,
legal.
you can't play Graceful Cherry. Like, ah,
If you
oh.
play Pot of Greed, you just have two more cards that you need to get rid of,
Mhm.
so you can draw even more cards.
Um,
That's the point.
it's really funny how they did that. Then they're just like, have Pot of Greed, go nuts, and people don't want to play it.
Have
Um,
Cannon Soldier, go nuts. It's once per turn though.
mhm. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. All monster effects in Rush Duels are a soft once per turn, even though they're not explicitly stated on the card. That's something to keep in mind when you're looking at monster effects. Is that you can't activate any of them more than once per turn unless you have another copy of the card. So, like Mystic Dealer, for example, says send a spellcaster from your hand to the graveyard to draw a card, but you can only do that once per
Like
turn.
if that wasn't once per turn, that'd be completely bonkers. You can basically just turbo out throwing your deck, but
Absolutely.
it is once per turn.
I think the card design of Rush Duels is so clean. Like it doesn't one of the major complaints that new players, especially in outside of Japan, have is that there's too much card decks on Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and by implementing this hard rule that all cards are a soft once per turn, which was basically like they were already moving to the situation where they didn't print any new cards that didn't have a hard once per turn on their effects. That was just more text on the card. So now with a new format where they can just say, if you're playing this format, all your monsters have a soft once per turn, and then they don't have to include it on the card text. It makes the card much
Mhm.
cleaner, and it also opens up for this focus on vanillas also opens up for full card art, which the artwork for Rush is just I have to say it's just better.
It's insane to me that Konami never really experimented with like out of border card art or stuff. Like Magic's been doing it for decades at this point. Pokemon has been doing it for a long time.
Hmm.
Yu-Gi-Oh has always hit me as like the TCG that's really behind on this trend. Like, sure, you have some of foilings that are very nice, like ghost rares and gold rares that some people like, some people don't. But there isn't really a card art that makes you go, "Wow, I really want to get that as a collector," which is like a whole market that you're just ignoring if you don't do that.
But Rush Duels did do that. There's a if you look it up, there's a
Yeah, Rush
regular
Duels.
order.
Rush Duels are the first one to do that, is what
Yeah,
I'm saying. Like I've seen that Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. I'm like, damn,
yeah,
that
right.
why didn't regular Yu-Gi-Oh do it like 10 years ago?
I know, I agree, but it's an improvement in my opinion, and that's like there's so many little things. The anime itself and the characters feel great. There's a lot more of a shared focus, and there's less stress on the characters. So I don't want to talk about the anime too much because I know that that's not really your deal, but it is everything about sevens kind of bleeds into Rush Duels, and it feels like a format that is designed to take stress off of the player and
Yeah,
just focus on the fun aspect of I draw a million cards, I play my big guy, I get to fight with you, and then I
like
pass
the
to you and you do the same thing.
yeah, like the whole reason the anime started, like the start of the anime was Yuga was fucking tired of regular Yu-Gi-Oh because it was obtuse and like really boring to him, so he just went and created a whole new game, and it just worked.
Mhm. And yeah, and Konami's brilliant with their whole let's just make infinite normal summons. Just cut the middleman out. Stop making this so complicated.
Whatever. It's not like it matters. Everyone plays Flu anyway.
Exactly. And then
You still have these iconic monsters like Otis, I think, in the anime. By
yep.
the way, Otis, that's just Seto backwards. You're not fooling anyone, Konami. Everybody
Oof.
noticed. But
Oof.
uh, but yeah, that's another like tongue-in-cheek kind of reference that itself that Yu-Gi-Oh that Seventh is doing with Yu-Gi-Oh in general. But like Otis just using the classics, like his first duel he had Blue Eyes. Later on he uses Summon Skull. There's a couple of new Gaia support that I think came out recently. There's support for like there's a new version of Red Eyes that's not called Red Eyes, but it's basically just Red Eyes with extra stuff.
Mhm.
So it's like it's still appealing to the core Yugi boomer audience that fondly remembers Yugi of that childhood thing with like the oh the hair guy and he summons the black spellcaster whatever its name was.
Mhm.
That Konami identified properly as like the main gimmick of their game, and they're still capitalizing on it and like doing some really fun stuff like the Utopia baseball cards. I
Yes.
think is like an example of
Mhm.
a really fun way to integrate Utopia, which is also a rather iconic monster, into a game that doesn't have Xyz monsters and probably never will.
Yep. You know, the weird thing is, Chrome and I were talking about this. For all their reprints and all their focus on the the people who look back and like the old stuff, um, there's no hero cards, which is so
Yet,
bizarre.
but there's Cyber Dragons.
Yeah, there's cyber dragons, and there are utopias, and there are you know, there's like Blackluster Soul Jersey. They made a version of
That is
Blackluster
true. I forgot
Soldier
about that.
that's not like in a game with no rituals. They added it as a they added a ritual spell that just lets you basically tribute summon it and get an extra effect for a turn. Um,
Yeah, and there's the Bean Soldier in a jersey as well.
yep. But there's no hero cards, and it's so weird. I would think that heroes would be like one of the things that people line up for. But I guess that's just more popular in the West than it is in the East for some reason.
Uh, it could be coming. It could be coming. Like Stratos, it would be work great as a legend card.
Hmm.
I think with only one effect to search probably.
But
Sparkman is too powerful for Rush Duels though.
yeah,
It's just too powerful.
yeah. But I mean, like if they release cards like Flame Wingman, and just say like, activate this effect this turn. If you destroy a monster in battle, your opponent takes damage equal to the monster's attack points.
You can just easily release like a card like Thunder Giant.
Yeah.
Flaying Wingman is like difficult because it's a battle trait kind of card, but I think there's like most hero fusions are just that Mudball Man. How would Mudball Man be an issue?
Yeah, just give us Mudball Man. Make Mudball Man turbo a deck,
Exactly.
and then you just because there's an existing Shield and Sword strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe they're worried that Mudball Man would make that deck too good.
Shield and Sword, that's a legend. But there's
Oh no,
Sword
it's
and
not.
Shield. No, that's the other one. Got them
Shield
confused.
and Sword is not a legend. It's a reprint, but it's you can run three of it.
Yeah, it's the trap one, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
The spell one is the legend,
All right, well,
isn't it?
I don't think
Yeah.
either of them is.
That I'm pretty sure like Shield and Sword is a legend. You know what? I'm looking it up just to see if I'm right or wrong, but I'm right.
Okay.
That's for my sake.
See,
Shield and Sword. Yeah, it is a legend.
it is a legend. Okay.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Why would you put with Shield and Sword? Maybe if you're playing the zero attack fiend deck
Yeah.
with like a bunch of chairs.
Oh, the one with chairs. Yeah, I remember that
The
deck.
one with chair, the chair deck.
All right. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, Mekklord. But thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Guys, you can find Skyguard Arena on the Steam uh, library and whitelist it. That game is coming out soon. I was part of the playtest. It was a lot of fun. Um, and Mekklord has been working really hard on it. I'm sure it's going to be one of the best games next year.
Thank you for that, and make sure to also join the official Discord and subscribe, of course, to my good friend Neo Serafi. Comment once, comment twice, and like the video, and share it with all 14 of your favorite friends.
Thank you. All right. This is Sarafi. I was thrilled to have you all with me.